Good evening, everybody. This is Saye Carrie. I hope everyone is having a good and relaxing weekend. So, this evening, I'm going to be discussing my book, Hidden Commonalities, Identifying the Cultural Similarities Among Africans and African Descendants. So this evening, I will talk about what inspired me to write Hidden Commonalities, and I will be also discussing a few points from my book, Hidden Commonalities. I started writing Hidden Commonalities in 2015. I completed and published Hidden Commonalities 2017. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about how how I was inspired to write the book, as well as the few points from my book. And also, I would like to thank you all for tuning in and watching this live. And also be sure to, after this live, you are welcome to watch the playback if you cannot make the live. I'm going to go ahead and discuss the summary of Hidden Commonalities. This book explains connections between Africans and African descendants. Hidden Commonalities explores the conflicts that have emerged among these groups because of different historical experiences and environments. This book attempts to create Black solidarity by sharing their commonalities through cuisine, music, and dance. Hidden Commonalities attempts to erase stereotypes that Africans and Africans of the diaspora hold against each other and empower them by celebrating their rich history and contributions worldwide. The inspiration of Hidden Commonalities. What inspired me to write and publish this book? The pride that I have of my racial and cultural identities, along with wanting to help bridge the gap between Africans and African descendants. I'm going to go ahead and share with you all the history of Liberia. I am first generation Liberian American. My parents and grandparents were born in Liberia, West Africa. Liberia is located off the coast of West Africa with an area of 43,000 square miles and a population of 5,058,000 people. Liberia was the first African republic to proclaim its independence and is Africa's first and oldest modern republic. Liberia gained its independence on July 26, 1847. It is also the second Black independent nation, trailing Haiti, which gained its independence on July 1st, 1804. Before the founding of Liberia in 1822, 16 indigenous groups lived in what was called the Pepper Coast, Grain Coast, Malagueta Coast, or Costa da Pimenta. These names were given by the European explorers such as the English and Portuguese. The ethnic groups are Gola, Kisi, Bassa, Bel, De, Gribble, Kran, Kru, Bandi, Gio, Pele, Loma, Mandingo, Mano, Mende, and Va. In the course of the 19th century, groups of freed Blacks and multiracials from the southern United States of America repatriated to the west coast of Africa. The repatriates called themselves Americo Liberian. The next group are the Congo people, who are the descendants of freed Black repatriates from the Caribbean, primarily the Barbados. Congo people are also recaptured Africans who intercepted from slave vessels by the U.S. and British Navy after abolishing the slave trade in 1806. Many originated from Central Africa, particularly the Congo River Basin. There are also nomadic tribes such like the Fulani, who engage mostly in trade, and the Fanti, who are often fishermen or traders of fish, usually from Ghana, living seasonally and more often permanently in Liberia. Liberia has people of European descent. Many have settled down as miners, missionaries, business people, and so on. Last, There is also a sizable number of Lebanese, Indians, and other people with Asian and Middle Eastern roots. Liberia also consists of a high percentage of a Liberian and Lebanese mixed population. There is also a small minority of Liberians mixed with European and reside in the country. I'm going to go ahead and further talk about my cultural background, my the ethnic groups I am descendant of. And as I stated in the previous earlier, I am first generation Liberian American. I'm a descendant of three Liberian indigenous ethnic groups, Kron, Loma, and Bassa, as well as a descendant of freed African descendants from the Barbados and United States who repatriated to Liberia, along with recaptured Africans who intercepted from slave vessels by the U.S. and British Navy after abolishing the slave trade. Many of them originated from Central Africa, particularly the Congo River Basin. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the African and African Diasporin connection. While spending my entire life in the United States, I observed many cultural groups within the Black race. Most of the groups consist of descendants of enslaved sub Saharan Africans brought to the Americas, such as North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean. There are also sub Saharan Africans who immigrated to the Western Hemisphere due to civil wars, coup d'etat, or for better opportunities. Throughout my life, I felt connected to Africans, African Americans, or Black Americans, Afro Caribbeans, or West Indians, as well as Afro Latins, Hispanics, because I saw myself in them. My father is a retired New York City social studies teacher, and some of his teachings involved Black history and African diaspora history. Growing up, we were big on discussing Liberia and the African diaspora. Throughout my own research, I saw our connections, which include food, music, dance, certain customs, hair, language, and the struggle we have endured. These groups often clash due to stereotypes, some cultural differences, language, and environmental factors. These clashes are also known as African Diasporan Wars. Growing up, while I lived in Elizabeth, New Jersey, there was a high Haitian population as well as African Americans, Black Americans. So it was Elizabeth was a fusion of cultures, different cultural backgrounds who resided in Elizabeth. And I observed sometimes there were some of the African diaspora wars that I saw were Black Americans versus Haitians. And while witnessing those type of clashes, it really bothered me because although we might come from different branches of the tree, we share the same root, which is Africa, Mama Africa. And I often confronted my peers, my Haitian and African American peers. I said, "Do you realize that this type of beef is not is very negative?" And to be honest, yeah, we may have these different ethnic backgrounds, but we are Black. In the United States, we are seen as Black first, and then your ethnicity or your nationality second. And I feel that we should, instead of fighting each other, we should come together to know each other. And then while we learn about each other, we can learn that we're not so much different. Despite our differences, we share an affinity, which is Mama Africa. And my focus is to dig deep down into our roots and share our commonalities, which can bring unification between us all. I'm going to go ahead and talk about how we are connected with food. So I'm going to discuss African and Caribbean fufu. Kuku, which is from Barbados, Tom Tom, Haiti, Mofongo, Puerto Rico, Mangu, Dominican Republic, Fufu de Plátano, um, Cuba, and fungi from Antigua are Caribbean versions of African fufu or ugali. What differentiates Caribbean fufu from its African ancestor is a denser texture with stronger flavors. On the other hand, West and Central African fufu is more of a gelatinous dough and more of a consistent mass. And as I stated before, the the Bajan, Haitian, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban, and Antiguan fufu is up top, and at the bottom, you can see the fufu that I prepared, Liberian style fufu soup that I prepared. I'm going to also talk about the comparison to Liberian and Haitian food. So there's a dish that is prepared in Haiti called lalo, and there's a dish that's prepared in Liberia or West Africa called palava or palaver sauce. Both Haitian lalo and African palava sauce consist of jute leaves. On the other hand, spinach is added to lalo as opposed to Liberian palava. Baking soda or cooking soda can be added to the jute leaves to help slow down the gooey or slimy process of the lalo or plato. Plato is a name used in Liberia to call jute leaves before it is processed and cooked. Lalo can be cooked with meat and crab. The dish is also eaten with white rice and saspoana, black bean sauce. Palava can also be cooked with meat, crab, or fish, and palm oil is added to the leaves instead of vegetable oil. Palava sauce is served with white rice or fufu. Jute leaves are also grown and cooked in other parts of Africa. Molokhia, which is the name called for jute leaf in Egypt, and in Asia, the Philippines, perhaps saluyot. At the top, I have an example of Haitian lalo with spinach, and that was prepared by YouTuber Lamis O. Let's get cooking with Lamis O. And at the bottom, we have Liberian style palava sauce prepared by YouTuber I Be the Chef. Now I'm going to talk about the African connection in soul food. The influence of Southern foods comes directly from colonial and antebellum slave quarters. Southern food, often recognized as the ideal American cuisine, originated from a complex blend of European, Native American, and African origins that found realization in the hands of enslaved people. While Southern food has evolved from sources and cultures of diverse regions, classes, race, and ethnicities, it is apparent that Africans and their descendants have one of the strongest yet least recognized roles in Southern cuisines. Black Americans also adopted the African cooking techniques such as one pot cooking, stews, gumbos, thickening with okra and nuts. Africans and their descendants prepared greens by laying meat on top too, and without that influence, the Southern tradition of using smoked meats as seasoning may never have begun. A Liberian dish like sauteed collard greens captures the connection between freed African Americans or Black American repatriates, and historically they will be called American Liberians, and indigenous people of Liberia. Depending on your liking, Liberian style collard greens includes seafood, meats, or poultry. However, habanero or Scotch bonnet peppers give the dish its key flavor. Along with Black American style collards, which hot sauce or a hot spice is added. So at the top right hand corner, we have Southern or Soul Food Collard Greens by Jocelyn Delk Adams. She is a founder of Grand Baby Cakes. And at the bottom, we have Liberian style collard greens prepared by me, Saye. We're going to talk about Jollof Rice and her descendants, Louisiana jambalaya and Gullah red rice. Jollof rice is a delicacy prepared throughout West Africa. The dish consists of rice, tomatoes, onions, spices, vegetables, meat, or seafood in a single pot. However, its ingredients and preparation vary across West Africa. The dish jambalaya is an offspring of Spanish paella and jollof rice. There is a variation between rural style jambalaya and also New Orleans style jambalaya. In rural Louisiana, jambalaya is brown because the rice in the dish absorbs the sauce in which it is cooked. By tradition, it is cooked in cast iron pots due to the the high temperature the pot has while cooking. As a result, there is a complete caramelization of natural sugars in meat or seafood and vegetables. The brown coloring is then observed by the rice. In New Orleans, jambalaya is usually red because of the heavy use of tomatoes. The entire dish is also prepared in a single pot. The West African influence is also particularly strong throughout the low country region of the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida, Gullah Geechee Nation cuisine. Gullah red rice is also a descendant of Jollof rice. Red rice consists of tomatoes and smoked sausage, along with celery, bell peppers, and onions. The traditional vegetables are used for seasoning. So at the top right corner, there is I prepared Liberian style jollof rice. In the middle, we have red Gullah red rice by Delicious Miss Brown, and at the bottom, we have New Orleans Creole jambalaya, created by NOLA native or New Orleans, Louisiana native Charlie the Cook Andrews. The next discussion, I'll be talking about African influence on the African diaspora music genres. Traditionally, the music of Africa historically ancient, rich, and with various regions and nations of Africa having many diverse musical traditions. Throughout Africa, music has been passed down orally or orally and is not written. African music heavily relies on percussion instruments of every variety, involving xylophones, drums, and tone producing instruments such as the mimbira or thumb piano. Traditional African music is performed with functional intent in celebrations, festivals, and storytelling. African influence on African American or Black American music. Black American music traces to the polyrhythmic music of the ethnic groups of Africa exclusively to Western, Sahelian, and Sub Saharan regions. African oral traditions encourage the use of music to pass on history, teach lessons, ease suffering, and relay messages during chattel slavery. The African pedigree of African American music is clear in some common elements such as call and response, syncopation, percussion, improvisation, swung, notes, blue notes, the use of falsetto, mellissima, and complex multi-part harmony. Throughout slavery, Africans in America combined traditional European hymns with African elements to create Negro spirituals or gospel music. African influence on Caribbean and Latin music. Musical genres of the Latin American region range in various forms. Each genre is fused of African, European, Asian, and indigenous American influences. However, the genres of the region was largely created by descendants of enslaved Africans and Afro-Caribbean music and Afro-Latin music, with contributions from East Indian descendants who created Indo-Caribbean music or chutney. Calypso is a genre of music that originated in Trinidad and Tobago and is mainly of African origin. The genre traces to the traditions of West Africans regarding music, structure, and function. Interestingly, Calypso has been called a poor man's newspaper due to the illiteracy during those times. Calypso also traces its roots to African traditions of improvised songs of self praise and scorn for others. It then became both a dance and cultural record of events at first in single tone style with implicit meanings and a spicy flavor. I'm going to go ahead and discuss the Western influence on African popular music. Contemporary African music is also highly diverse. However, it shares many characteristics of Western popular music in the mid 20th century, beginning with recording technology and developing the recording industry. Contemporary African music has been heavily influenced by rhythm and blues, jazz, funk, American soul music, Jamaican reggae, zouk, hip hop, and other musical forms from the Americas. One of the most important 20th century singers of South African popular music was Miriam Makeba, and may God rest her soul, who played a key role in the 60s in drawing global audiences' attention to African music and its meaning. Another prominent person who helped to form contemporary African music was the late Fela Kuti, and God rest his soul as well. Kuti invented the famous music genre named Afrobeat in Accra, Ghana in 1968. Afrobeat is the most popular form of music in Nigeria, Ghana, some parts of Africa, and the world. Afrobeat combines traditional Ghana music, jazz, high life, funk, and chanted vocals fused with percussion and vocal styles. In the 21st century, Afrobeats have become a largely different style combining influences from Congolese rumba, hip hop, and dancehall. Early hits included African Queen by Two Face, Idibia, and No One Like You by P Square. Now, in this next section, I'll be discussing African diaspora conflict, or as modern times, African diasporan wars. Africans and African descendants are united by their common ancestry. They are also connected due to the history of oppression under their European conquerors. Also, there has been suspicions because of some African ethnic groups' role in the transatlantic slave trade. Africans and African descendants differ because they have been shaped by different historical experiences and environments. However, they are all African people. This has been argued by the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and many others. Even Nelson Mandela said in his speech before an African American audience in Harlem, New York, that we are all children of Africa. Throughout the United States, there has even been a chasm between Black Americans and Africans. The problem stems from deep misconceptions, sometimes led by the US media. Surprisingly, most African Americans believe that Africans are backward and primitive. Some Black Americans ridicule West Indians and other immigrants of color as well. Sadly, these indifferences have prevented many African Americans from participating in the current economic boom in Africa, and it has shut some African immigrants out of opportunities for economic advancement here in the United States. These types of risks did not stop, example, African American entrepreneur and philanthropist Robert L. Johnson, who was also the founder of BET, Black Entertainment Television, from investing in a hotel and villas named Kindika in Liberia, West Africa in 2009. And just to note, the resort is under new ownership and has been since, I believe, 2018, as well as Ghanaian company who invested a whopping 9 million into the Black Chicago Bank Illinois Service Federal Savings and Loan Association in 2016. I hope these accusations would inspire Africans, African Americans, and other African diasporan communities to work together for their mutual benefit. Furthermore, a significant number of Black immigrants are in agreement of their stereotypical view of uh, Black Americans as people who are lazy and violent. Some also feel that Black Americans are not highly motivated and do not take advantage of the lavish opportunities which exist in the United States. Many African and West Indian immigrants have a notion that African Americans do not save their money, however, spend it for instant gratification. These stereotypes show that some Africans, West Indians, and other immigrants do not appreciate the sacrifice African Americans made in the United States. During the Civil Rights Movement, Black Americans helped to lay the foundation for Africans, West Indians, and other immigrants to come to the United States and live in a country where both Blacks and whites have equal rights, at least in theory, if not always in practice. African Americans usually see racism as the main cause of poverty among their people. They are also quick to point out instances of perceived racism, even in circumstances where it is ambiguous, unclear, or more complex than simple racial bigotry or discrimination. On the other hand, after suffering many years with civil wars, military coups, and other problems, Africans and other immigrants are happy to be in a country that offers them freedom. Most are ready to integrate into the American culture without getting involved in the lingering racial conflicts. Some rarely get involved in the ongoing civil rights struggle, and that has angered many African Americans. Afro Caribbeans, Africans, and other immigrants of color lose their immigrant advantage because they are in a country in which their skin color becomes the basis for discriminatory treatment. West Indian and African immigrants fought for civil rights, and they have been victims of civil rights violations as well. For example, in Howard Beach, New York, in 1986, a mob chased Trinidadian born Michael Griffith while fleeing. He ran into the traffic of the Belt Parkway and was fatally hit by a car. In 1997, police tortured and sodomized Haitian born Abner Luima at a New York City precinct. Amadou Diallo, an unarmed West Indian Guinean Liberian born with no criminal record, was killed by four New York City police officers who fired 41 shots at him in the doorway of his Bronx, New York apartment building in 1999. In 2012, an unarmed Jamaican American teenager, Ramarley Graham, was shot and killed by New York City police. Law enforcement policies like racial profiling and stop and frisk has made it clear how externally undifferentiated one black face was from another. So this goes to show, regardless of if you're Liberian, if you're Bajan, if you're Black American, if you're Haitian, if you're Dominican, if you're Nigerian, and so forth, what white supremacists see us all as in the United States, white supremacists see us as black people. So it doesn't matter. You can still face racial profiling, unfortunately. And I'm going to go ahead and start my closing statement. Once Black people, whether they are from North America, Africa, Latin America, or the Caribbean, connect to enforce a discipline and respect for each other, the split that has divided us will narrow. Then we can finally work together and combat problems our people face in Africa, the United States, and other African diaspora communities. Hidden Commonalities can be found at www.saycarrie.com, Amazon, and Barnes and Noble. I want to thank everybody for watching. Those who watched the live or who will watch the playback, thank you so much. You all can follow me at Saye Carrie on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Please like, share, comment, follow, and subscribe. And I also would like to mention, as I stated earlier, Hidden Commonalities was published in 2017, and regarding African descendants and Africans helping practicing cooperative economics, there has been some people who have started doing that recently, and you can check that on YouTube. People building, investing in the motherland, and you can check the pages that you can check. You can check Zawadi M. She discusses that. You can also check out Dinah Samir, Search for Uhuru. I will leave you all with a quote that I wrote a couple years ago. Never suppress who you are because we are all created in a distinctive way. Again, I just want to thank you all for watching this live. And again, if you can't watch the live, go ahead and check the playback. And if you all have any questions, like to reach out to me, just type in Saye Carrie on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and I will kindly respond to your questions. And going back to cooperative economics, I feel a way for Black people worldwide to come together is if we start practicing cooperative economics, if we start investing in Mama Africa, and we also start investing in Black communities within the United States, the Caribbean, Latin America, or even in Europe and other parts of the world in Europe, because I know we are African people, Black people, we are spread out spread out through four corners of the earth. And like going on to go back to YouTube, we have influencers who are doing that, and I would like to thank them for what they're doing and so forth. And even on YouTube, I have Liberian fellow Liberian sisters who are who've moved back to Liberia, and they share their experiences of living, coming back, going back home to Liberia and living there, and how life is like. And I understand sometimes people wanting, encouraging people to go back home to repatriate to Liberia or any other African countries, and there's questions how things will be. But again, do your research and so forth. And again, I'm Saye Carrie, and thank you all for watching. And I will see you all soon in another live. And tune in for another live where I'm going to discuss my second book, Unraveling the Story of Black African Hair, where I'm going to explain what inspired me to write and publish Unraveling the Story of Black African Hair. Again, everyone have a good evening or good day. Bye bye.